damage. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at the financial relationships that FTX had, as we go down the list, it could create a cascade of insolvencies. And unfortunately, crypto doesn't get a bailout. Our competitors do. TradFi lives with that every day. They'd already be calling up their buddies in government saying, how big of a check can we haggle over? With crypto, we don't get that. We just get the privilege of cleaning up the mess and then being blamed for it and having to deal with the financial outcome ourselves. Now, I do believe this is not going to kill cryptocurrency. I do believe that our industry will be much stronger in the future. And I do believe that our best days are still ahead of us. This said, I do believe that unlike Mt. Gox, unlike Celsius, unlike Luna, and past events, FTX does have the unique property that it could end up being the straw that breaks the camel's back and changes, at least in the short to midterm, how cryptocurrencies work in America. In particular, changes the appetite lawmakers have for giving the industry a pro growth freedom mandate. We could look at a world where non custodial wallets are no longer permitted in the United States. We could look at a world where every cryptocurrency except for Bitcoin is labeled a security and forced to comply with onerous regulations which will rob them of liquidity and not provide any consumer protections or investor protections. If you believe that they do, I will remind you that a huge amount of tech stocks are down 90% this year. And I will remind you that Bernie Madoff ran a regulated entity. So don't believe for a moment that additional regulation, if blindly applied, is going to solve any particular problem for the industry. But now that is a possibility. It is also a possibility that we could see a mass consolidation of the regulated infrastructure in this industry towards the hands of just a few players who will then form an oligarchy, which is not possible to displace and will basically end the American cryptocurrency marketplace as we used to enjoy.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Now we have Charles Hoskinson from Cardano speaking the truth. But guys, you know I've showed plenty of times where he's been in Washington also speaking to Congress. So he's also a puppet. And we know he knows all about the fourth industrial revolution working with Ben Goertzel. But he speaks nothing of it. But he definitely speaks the truth in this video. He says the exact same thing that I'm telling you. Now what happened with FTX, because all of the connections, it's going to allow legislation to come in, and this will allow crypto to fall in the same hands of the big corporations and big banks. We know all the major projects the big corporations and big banks have been funding from the beginning, but this will allow them to get these companies pennies on the dollar. And like Charles said, in crypto, we don't have anyone that's going to bail us out because, guys, we know if this happened to the big banks, they would get bailed out. The media keeps comparing this to Bernie Madoff. But, guys, you know I did a video on Bernie Madoff. The SEC Ben knew what Bernie Madoff was doing, and then also JP Morgan knew what they were doing and removing the money. And as the Bankman-Fried is going down, what do we see moving? The money. And we have a couple companies in the industry that can track everything. But they didn't track Luna. And they're not tracking Sam Bankman-Fried because we know that money is going to go right to the big banks. And we know the banks are the biggest what? I'm going to let you finish that. Because we know when it comes to the New World Order, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
Happen in the industry, whether we look at Celsius, whether we look at Mt. Gox and the qualified people there or lack thereof, we look at any of these institutions that have failed. Generally speaking, when you look at it, it's a people, procedure, and process problem as much as it is a flawed business idea. Standards, regulation, and oversight do tend to help from the perspective of forcing you, either through soft power like SROs and memberships, and hard power through explicit regulation, in getting at least to that statement of safety. It is important to point out that this was not an unregulated business. And there's been enormous amounts of discussion about, well, how should cryptocurrency react? Look at the unregulated cryptocurrency. This is frankly a centralized business failing. Bitcoin was not hacked. Ethereum was not hacked. Cardano was not hacked. None of the big chains were hacked. Crypto didn't fail. People failed. People in positions of trust. At the end of the day, as much as we like to believe in the principles of cryptocurrency, this had everything to do with people putting their money in centralized exchanges and organizations entrusting centralized businesses to do something on their behalf. That's the very industry we're trying to get rid of with the cryptocurrency space. Unfortunately, it's going to now be conflated, and there's a very high possibility that the fallout of this will be new legislation. Hopefully, decent legislation, but there's a strong possibility that it won't be. As members of this industry, we're just going to have to live with it, and we're going to have to figure out ways to integrate and deal with it. But this is unfortunately the consequence when you have people who don't know what they're doing get into positions of power and trust and create cascading and catastrophic damage. Now, I'm not saying this will happen. I'm saying that the probability of these types of things happening is now greater as a direct result of the failure of FTX. The reason being is that unlike Celsius and Luna, the principals at FTX had a direct relationship with many politicians in Washington, D.C. Already on Twitter, you may have noticed many pictures of politicians, mostly on the left, but some on the right, and Sam Brinkman and his cohorts. He made no small deal out of the fact that he was dumping millions of dollars into elections and into influence and lobbying to try to push through specific legislation. That meant that there are a lot of politicians who now don't want to have that relationship, and as a result, will probably try to scrub it by becoming unnecessarily harsh on cryptocurrency.
We're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort. And China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids' books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip. of the 3 books, there's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID-33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.